My brother said splitting the inheritance wouldn't be fair since he had kids, and I didn't, then found out Dad's will said otherwise. We were sitting in Dad's lawyer's office 3 days after the funeral. The office smelled like old leather and expensive cologne. My brother Garrett had brought his wife and their 2 kids, as if the sight of them would somehow influence the reading of the will. Obviously, Dad would have wanted his grandchildren taken care of, Garrett said before the lawyer even opened the folder. I mean, that's just common sense. I hadn't said a word yet, just nodded politely when the lawyer offered coffee. For the past 6 months, I'd been living in Dad's house, managing his medications, driving him to appointments, holding the basin when the chemo made him sick. Garrett visited twice, once for Christmas, once for Dad's birthday. Both times he spent most of the visit in the garage on work calls. The lawyer cleared his throat and began reading. The house, the savings, the investment accounts, everything split 70-30. 70% to me, 30 to Garrett. Garrett's face went white, then red. That can't be right. The lawyer adjusted his glasses. Your father was very specific. He updated this will 4 months ago. 4 months? Garrett turned to me. What did you do? Did you manipulate him while he was sick? I took a sip of coffee. It was terrible, but I needed something to do with my hands. Your father left a letter, the lawyer said, sliding an envelope across the desk to Garrett. He wanted you to read it here. Garrett's hand shook as he opened it. I watched his eyes scan the page. Dad's handwriting was shaky, but legible. I'd already read my copy at home. This is insane, Garrett whispered. But he kept reading. I knew what it said. How Dad had called Garrett 17 times during his bone marrow biopsy. How Garrett's voicemail was full. How I was the one who learned to change Dad's PICC line, who researched clinical trials at 2 a.m., who held his hand through every nightmare. The letter didn't say it meanly. That wasn't Dad's style. It just stated facts. Garrett's wife put her hand on his arm. We should contest this. You can try, the lawyer said mildly. Though your father was evaluated by 2 doctors who confirmed his mental competency when signing, the meeting ended in silence. Garrett left without looking at me. That was 3 weeks ago. Yesterday, Garrett's wife called. Her voice was different, smaller. We need to talk about Garrett. My stomach dropped. What happened? He's been diagnosed with early-onset Alzheimer's. The doctors say it's aggressive. He's going to need round-the-clock care within a year. The silence stretched between us. We can't afford the kind of facility he needs, she continued. With the medical bills and the kids' college funds, we're already stretched thin. I know things have been difficult between you 2, but he's still your brother. I thought about Dad's letter, about the 17 missed calls, about Garrett's work calls in the garage while Dad deteriorated upstairs. I need you to consider something, she said. We were thinking you could use part of your inheritance to help cover his care. It's what family does, and you don't have kids to worry about, so I set my phone down on the kitchen counter, stared at it, picked it up. I need to think about this, I said. Of course, but we need an answer soon. His first evaluation is scheduled for next week, and there was a knock at my door. I moved to the window and looked out. A black Mercedes was parked in my driveway. I have to go, I told her. Wait, we really need to... I hung up. The knock came again, harder this time. I opened the door to find a woman in her 60s standing on my porch. She wore an expensive pantsuit and carried a leather briefcase. Her hair was pulled back in a tight bun, and her eyes were the same shade of blue as Dad's. Can I help you? I asked. I'm Patricia Dunmore, she said. I'm your father's sister. I stared at her. Dad never mentioned having a sister. May I come in? I stepped aside. She walked past me into the living room, taking in the space with careful eyes. Dad's reading chair still had his book on the armrest. I hadn't been able to move it. Patricia sat on the couch without being invited. She set her briefcase on the coffee table and opened it. I know you're confused, she said. Your father and I were estranged for 37 years. We had a falling out when he was 23. I recently learned of his death through a mutual contact. Why are you here? She pulled out a folder. Because your father's lawyer contacted me. Apparently, there's a second will, one that supersedes the document read 3 weeks ago. My hands went cold. That's impossible, I said. The lawyer told us. The lawyer knew about the first will. This second one was kept with my attorney in Boston. It was written 8 years ago, long before your father got sick. She slid the folder across the table. Everything is legitimate. I've had 3 different law firms verify it. I didn't touch the folder. What does it say? Patricia leaned back. Your father left specific instructions. The 70-30 split remains in effect, but only if certain conditions are met. If those conditions aren't fulfilled within 90 days of his death, the entire estate goes to charity. The American Cancer Society specifically. What conditions? You have to take care of Garrett. The words hung in the air between us. Excuse me? Your father knew about Garrett's diagnosis. He'd known for 2 years. I stood up. That's not possible. My sister-in-law just told me yesterday. Patricia opened another document. Your father received a call from Garrett's neurologist 23 months ago. Garrett had put your father down as his emergency contact and forgot to update it. The doctor thought your father should know. She showed me a phone record. Dad's cell phone, a number I knew by heart. Multiple calls to and from a Boston neurology clinic. Dad never said anything. No, he wanted to see what Garrett would do, whether he'd come to him for help, whether he'd be honest. Patricia's expression was unreadable. Garrett chose not to tell him. Not even when your father was dying. I sat back down. So this whole thing with the inheritance was a test? In a way. Your father wanted to see how you'd react when Garrett's wife asked for help. He predicted almost exactly how it would play out. He knew she'd call. He knew she'd use the kids as leverage. He knew she'd mention you don't have children. My throat felt tight. And if I say no, then the charity gets everything. But if you agree to help Garrett, to genuinely help him through his illness the way you helped your father, then you get everything. The full estate. Not 70-30. All of it. How much are we talking about? Patricia smiled slightly. Your father was more successful than he let on. The estate is worth approximately $4.7 million. I couldn't breathe. That can't be right. The lawyer said, the first will only cover assets your father held in his own name. The rest was in trusts, investment accounts, and property holdings that weren't disclosed in the initial reading. Your father was very good at keeping secrets. I thought about the house, the modest car, the simple life Dad had lived. Why would he hide this? Because he wanted to see who people really were. Garrett knew about some of it. Not all of it, but enough. That's why he was so angry about the 30%. He thought he was being cheated out of millions. Patricia stood and walked to the window. Your father made a lot of money in commercial real estate in the 80s. He sold everything right before the market crashed in 2008. Then he invested in tech stocks that most people had never heard of. By the time he got sick, his portfolio had grown to a size that would have changed how people treated him. So he pretended to be middle class? He wanted authentic relationships. He wanted to know who would show up when there was nothing to gain. She turned to face me. You showed up. Even when it was hard. Even when Garrett didn't. I looked at the folder on the table. What happens if I don't decide within 90 days? Today is day 73. You have 17 days left. And I have to help Garrett? What does that even mean? Pay for his care? Visit him? Patricia pulled out another document. Your father was very specific. You have to provide direct care, the same way you did for him. You don't have to do it alone. You can hire nurses, caregivers, whatever you need. But you have to be involved. You have to show up. For how long? Until he no longer recognizes you? The neurologist estimates that will be approximately 18 months from now. I laughed. It came out bitter. So I have to spend a year and a half taking care of the brother who couldn't be bothered to answer the phone when Dad was dying. Yes. And if I do this, I get $4.7 million. Minus taxes and the cost of Garrett's care. But yes, essentially. I stood and walked to Dad's chair, picked up his book. It was a biography of Theodore Roosevelt, bookmarked halfway through. He'd never get to finish it. Can I ask you something? I said. Of course. Why did you and Dad stop speaking? Patricia was quiet for a long moment. I told him he was wasting his life. He'd just married your mother and I thought he was settling. I wanted him to move to New York to build something bigger. We said things we couldn't take back. By the time I realized I was wrong, 30 years had passed. Pride is a hell of a thing. Did you ever try to reconcile? Once. About 5 years ago. I called him, but he'd changed his number. I sent a letter to his old address, but it was returned. I hired a private investigator, but by the time I found him, he'd already been diagnosed. I didn't want our reunion to be about him dying. She looked at me. I regret that decision every day. The afternoon sun was coming through the windows at an angle, hitting Dad's chair the way it always did around 3 p.m. He used to sit there and read until dinner. He talked about you once, I said. I was maybe 12. We were driving somewhere, and a song came on the radio. He got this look on his face, sort of sad and distant. He said he had a sister who loved that song. Then he changed the station and never mentioned it again. Patricia's eyes were wet, but she didn't cry. Bridge over troubled water? I nodded. She sat back down, suddenly looking older. We used to sing it together when we were kids. Terribly, I might add. We sounded like wounded cats. Despite everything, I smiled. My phone buzzed. A text from Garrett's wife. Have you thought about what we discussed? I showed Patricia the message. What are you going to do? She asked. I don't know yet. Do you want my advice? Will you give it to me even if I say no? She smiled. Probably, but I'll ask anyway. Go ahead. Think about what your father was really trying to teach you. This isn't just about the money. It's about whether you can be the bigger person. Whether you can show compassion to someone who didn't show it to you. That sounds like something a motivational poster would say. Doesn't make it less true. I set my phone down. Garrett doesn't deserve my help. No, he doesn't. Dad knew that. Yes. So why would he ask this of me? Patricia closed her briefcase. Because the test isn't about what Garrett deserves. It's about who you are when no one's watching. When there's no reward except knowing you did the right thing. She stood. Except in this case, there is a reward. A very substantial one. That feels manipulative. It is manipulative. Your father wasn't perfect, but he was trying to teach you something important in the only way he knew how. She handed me a business card. My number is on there. Call me when you've made your decision. Or if you just want to talk about him. I'd like to know what kind of man he became. After she left, I sat in Dad's chair for a long time. The book felt heavy in my hands. My phone rang. Garrett's wife again. I answered. I'm sorry for being pushy earlier, she said. I know this is a lot to process, but I need to tell you something important. Something I should have told you weeks ago. What? Garrett knew. About the will. About the split. Your father told him 6 months before he died. He wanted to give Garrett a chance to change, to step up. Garrett chose not to. I closed my eyes. Why are you telling me this? Because I'm tired of lying. Garrett made me promise not to say anything. He thought if you knew, you'd hold it against him even more than you already do. She paused. He was right. Is he really sick? Yes. That part is true. The diagnosis, the timeline, all of it. But he's known for 2 years. He kept it from everyone, including me, until the symptoms got too obvious to hide. Why? Pride, shame, fear. Pick one. Garrett spent his whole life being the golden child, the successful one, the one with the perfect family. He couldn't handle the idea of being weak. I thought about the 17 missed calls, about Garrett in the garage on work calls, while Dad lay dying upstairs. What do you want from me? I asked. Nothing. I just wanted you to know the truth. Whatever you decide, you should decide based on fact, not guilt. She took a breath. And I wanted to apologize for the way I spoke to you, about not having kids. That was cruel, and I'm sorry. After we hung up, I sat there as the sun set. The room grew dark, but I didn't turn on the lights. I thought about Dad's letter, about the facts he'd laid out so carefully. Not meanly, just truthfully. I thought about Patricia's question. What kind of person was I when no one was watching? Except someone was watching. Dad had built this entire test knowing I'd be sitting exactly where I was sitting, trying to figure out what to do. I picked up my phone and called the number Patricia had given me. "I'll do it," I said when she answered. "I'll take care of Garrett." "Are you sure?" "No, but I'm going to do it anyway." "Why?" I looked at Dad's book, the bookmark sticking out halfway through. Because Dad didn't get to finish his story, but I can finish mine. The next morning, I drove to Garrett's house. His wife answered the door, surprise clear on her face. "I'm here to see my brother," I said. She led me to the den. Garrett was sitting in front of the television, but he wasn't watching it. His eyes were unfocused, distant. When he saw me, he stood quickly, too quickly. He stumbled slightly, catching himself on the armrest. "What are you doing here?" His voice was defensive, but there was something else underneath. Fear. "We need to talk." His wife excused herself, closing the door behind her. I sat down. Garrett remained standing. "I know about the diagnosis," I said. "I know you've known for 2 years. I know Dad told you about the will 6 months before he died." Garrett's face crumbled. He sat down heavily. "I'm sorry," he said. "I'm so sorry. I wanted to be there. I wanted to help, but I couldn't. I couldn't watch him die knowing I was dying too. So you just didn't show up? I thought I had time. I thought I could fix things later, after he got better. But he didn't get better." Garrett's hands were shaking, and now it's too late. I watched my brother fall apart in front of me. The golden child, the successful one, the one who'd always had it figured out. "I can't forgive you," I said. "Not yet. Maybe not ever." He nodded, wiping his eyes. "But I'm going to help you anyway." His head snapped up. "What?" "I'm going to take care of you, the way I took care of Dad. Not because you deserve it, not because we're suddenly okay, but because it's the right thing to do." "Why would you do that?" "Because Dad asked me to, and because I'm not you." Over the next 2 weeks, I moved some of my things into Garrett's guest room. I met with his neurologist, learned about his medications, and started coordinating his care. His wife went back to work, grateful for the help. The kids, teenagers now, were confused but accepting. Garrett was difficult at first, defensive. He'd snap at me when I tried to help him remember his pills. He'd refuse to do the cognitive exercises the doctor recommended. He'd insist he was fine. He could handle it himself. He didn't need his little sister taking care of him. But slowly, the fight went out of him. One night, about 3 weeks in, I found him crying in the kitchen at 2 a.m. "I can't remember where the glasses are," he said. "I've lived in this house for 12 years and I can't remember where we keep the glasses." I got him a glass from the cabinet, filled it with water. He drank it slowly, his hands trembling. "I'm scared," he whispered. "I know. I don't want to forget my kids. I don't want to forget my life. I'll help you remember," I said, "for as long as I can." The next day, I started a journal. I wrote down everything. The names of his kids, his wife, his parents, the address of his house, his favorite foods, the way he liked his coffee, stories from our childhood, details about his work, his friends, his life. I showed it to him that evening. "When you forget," I said, "I'll read this to you. I'll help you remember who you are." He hugged me then, first time in probably 20 years. "I don't deserve this," he said. "I don't deserve you." "No," I agreed. "You don't." But I stayed anyway. The months passed. Garrett's decline was gradual at first, then rapid. He'd forget conversations we'd had that morning. He'd ask the same questions over and over. He'd get confused about where he was, why I was there. His kids struggled. They'd come home from school and their dad wouldn't recognize them. Or he'd think they were still children, asking about homework from classes they'd taken years ago. I was there for all of it, the good days and the bad ones, the moments of clarity and the long stretches of confusion. 6 months in, Patricia came to visit. She sat with Garrett for an afternoon, telling him stories about Dad when he was young. Garrett listened, sometimes understanding, sometimes not. "You're doing a good thing," she told me later. "Your father would be proud." "I'm not doing it for pride." "I know. That's why he would be proud." One evening, about 8 months into caring for Garrett, I was reading to him from the journal. His wife was at a parent-teacher conference. The kids were upstairs doing homework. "Dad called you 17 times, I read. "During his bone marrow biopsy. Your voicemail was full." Garrett looked at me with clear eyes, one of his increasingly rare moments of lucidity. "I know," he said. "I listened to the messages later." He sounded scared. "He needed me and I wasn't there." "Why didn't you call back?" "Because I knew if I heard his voice, really heard it, I'd have to admit he was dying, and I couldn't do that. So I just let the voicemails pile up." He started crying. I was a coward. I closed the journal. "Yes," I said. "You were. Do you hate me?" I thought about that for a long time. "No," I said finally. "I did, for a while. But hate takes too much energy, and you need all the energy I have. I don't understand why you're doing this." "Neither do I, sometimes." He smiled slightly. "That's honest, at least." The next day, he didn't remember the conversation, or me, or where he was. It was the beginning of the end. 90 days came and went. I called Patricia to confirm the conditions had been met. "More than met," she said. "I've been receiving regular updates from the care team. You've gone above and beyond. When do I get access to the estate? The probate process will take a few months, but I can start transferring some funds now if you need them for Garrett's care. That would help. I'll have my attorney draw up the paperwork." That night, I sat in Dad's chair. I'd brought it to Garrett's house along with his book. I'd finally finished it. The Theodore Roosevelt biography. The last chapter was about Roosevelt's later years after he'd left office, about how he'd traveled and written and lived fully until the end. Dad had underlined a quote, "Do what you can, with what you have, where you are." I understood now. This whole thing, the wills, the conditions, the test, it wasn't about the money. It was about whether I could look at someone who'd hurt me and still choose compassion. Garrett died 11 months later, peacefully, in his sleep. By then he didn't recognize anyone. Not his wife, not his kids, not me. But I was there, holding his hand, the way I'd held Dad's. At the funeral, his wife pulled me aside. "Thank you," she said, "for everything. I know it wasn't easy." "No," I agreed. "It wasn't. Why did you do it?" I thought about Dad's book, about the underlined quote. "Because I could." The estate was settled 3 months later. After taxes and Garrett's medical expenses, I netted about $3.2 million, more money than I'd ever imagined having. Patricia helped me set up trusts and investments. We had coffee every other week, talking about Dad, about Garrett, about life. "What are you going to do with it?" she asked one afternoon. "The money. I'm not sure yet. Part of it will go to Garrett's kids for college. They shouldn't be punished for their father's mistakes." "That's generous." "It's fair." I stirred my coffee. "I'm thinking about starting a foundation for families dealing with terminal illness, to help with expenses, with care, with all the things insurance doesn't cover. Your father would love that, would he?" "I never really knew what he wanted." Patricia smiled. "He wanted you to be happy and to be kind. Looks like you figured out how to do both." I drove to the cemetery after that, stood between Dad's grave and Garrett's. They were buried next to each other, at Dad's request. I hadn't known about that request until after Garrett died, but it made sense. Dad had probably planned it years ago. "I passed your test," I told Dad's headstone. "I don't know if I'm supposed to feel differently now, enlightened or something, but mostly I just feel tired." The wind blew through the trees. Garrett said he was sorry, near the end. "I don't know if that matters to you." It didn't matter much to me, but I thought you should know. I sat down on the grass between them. "Patricia says you'd be proud. I hope she's right. I hope this was what you wanted. But honestly, Dad, I wish you'd just told me. All the games, all the tests, all the secrets. I would have helped Garrett anyway if you just asked. You didn't need to dangle millions of dollars in front of me." But even as I said it, I knew it wasn't entirely true. Without the money, without the stakes, would I have shown up? Would I have stayed through the hard parts? I wanted to believe I would have, but I couldn't be certain. "Maybe you knew me better than I knew myself," I admitted. I stayed there until the sun started to set. Then I drove home to Dad's house. My house now. The rooms were full of his things. Books, photographs, furniture, pieces of a life well lived, if quietly. I found his journal in his desk drawer. I'd never looked through his personal papers before. It felt invasive, but now I wanted to understand. The entries were sporadic. A few lines here and there, thoughts and observations. One entry, dated 2 months before he died. "Told Garrett about the will today. Gave him a chance to change. Not sure if he'll take it. Hope he does. Hope I'm wrong about him." 3 weeks later. Garrett didn't call. Not surprised. Disappointed, but not surprised. And then, a week before he died, called Patricia's attorney. Set up the second will. "If I'm right about who my children really are, this will work out the way it should. If I'm wrong, well, cancer patients can use the money." The final entry was dated the day before he died. "Tired today, ready to rest, but also curious. Curious to see what happens next. Not to me. I know where I'm going. Curious about her. About whether she'll choose kindness over anger. I think she will. She's stronger than she knows." I closed the journal and set it back in the drawer. "I chose kindness," I said to the empty room. "But it was harder than you thought it would be." The house was quiet. I made dinner, ate alone at the kitchen table, washed the dishes, normal things, everyday things, but they felt different now, lighter somehow. I called Garrett's wife that evening. "How are the kids?" I asked. "Managing. It's hard, but they're resilient. I want to set up college funds for them, separate from everything else. They'll have full rides anywhere they want to go." She was quiet for a moment. "You don't have to do that." "I know, but I want to. Thank you. They'll appreciate it when they're older. Tell them it's from their grandfather and their father, not from me." After we hung up, I opened my laptop and started researching nonprofit organizations. How to start them, how to run them, what families dealing with terminal illness actually needed. The foundation took shape over the next year. We called it the Last Mile Project. Services for families in the final stages of terminal illness. Financial assistance, care coordination, respite care for primary caregivers. Patricia joined the board, so did Garrett's wife, and 2 of the nurses who'd helped care for Dad. We helped 43 families in our first year, covered over $800,000 in medical expenses that insurance wouldn't pay. I met a lot of people like me, who were watching someone they loved slip away, people who were exhausted and scared and trying to hold everything together. I told them what I'd learned, that it was okay to be angry, that it was okay to need help, that showing up was enough, even when it didn't feel like enough. Some days were good. We'd get a thank you letter from a family we'd helped. We'd secure a grant that would let us expand services. Other days were hard. We'd lose someone we'd been helping. We'd run into bureaucratic nightmares with insurance companies. We'd come up against our own limitations. But we kept going. 2 years after Dad died, I went back to the cemetery. Both graves were well maintained. I'd hired a service to keep them clean, to leave fresh flowers. "I'm doing okay," I told them both. "Not great, but okay. The foundation is growing. We're helping people. I think you'd like that, Dad. Even you, Garrett. When you were yourself, you had a good heart. You just forgot to use it sometimes." I sat down on the grass. "I forgive you, Garrett. I'm not sure when it happened. It wasn't a big moment, just a gradual letting go. You were sick. You were scared. You made bad choices. But you were still my brother." The wind blew. Somewhere nearby, a bird was singing. "I'm dating someone," I continued. "A doctor I met through the foundation. He's kind. He shows up. I think you'd approve, Dad. Though you'd probably give him the 3rd degree about his intentions." I smiled at the thought. I'm happy. Not the way I thought I'd be happy. This isn't the life I planned, but it's a good life. A meaningful one. I stood up, brushing grass off my jeans. "Thank you, Dad, for the test. For believing I'd pass it. For giving me the chance to be better than I thought I was." I walked back to my car. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. My phone rang. The foundation's care coordinator. "We have a new family," she said. "Father with pancreatic cancer, 3 kids. Wife is overwhelmed. They need help. I'll meet with them tomorrow," I said. "Send me the details." As I drove home, I thought about Dad's underlined quote, "Do what you can, with what you have, where you are." I was doing that now, every day. The money helped. It gave me freedom to focus on work that mattered, to help people who needed it. But the real gift Dad had given me wasn't the inheritance. It was the chance to discover who I was when tested, to find out that I could choose compassion over bitterness, that I could show up for someone who'd hurt me, that I was stronger than I knew. I pulled into my driveway. The house was dark, but welcoming. I went inside, made tea, and sat in Dad's chair. Opened his Theodore Roosevelt biography to the underlined quote, read it again, and understood. Dad wasn't testing whether I'd help Garrett for the money. He was showing me that I'd help Garrett despite everything, that it was in my nature to show up, to care, to do the hard thing because it was right. The money was just permission to keep doing it, for more people, on a bigger scale. 3 years after Dad died, Patricia and I were having our regular coffee when she asked, "Do you ever regret it, taking care of Garrett?" "No," I said, and I meant it. It was hard, the hardest thing I've ever done, but it taught me something important. What's that? That the person you are in your worst moments matters more than the person you are in your best ones. Anyone can be kind when it's easy, but showing up when it's hard, when you get nothing back, when every instinct says to walk away, that's when you find out who you really are. Patricia smiled. "Your father knew that about you, did he? That's why he left you everything, not because you earned it, but because he knew you'd use it the way he would have, to help people, to make things better." I finished my coffee. "I have a question for you," I said. "Go ahead. Do you regret the years you lost with Dad?" She was quiet for a long time. "Every day," she said finally. "But I can't change the past. All I can do is honor his memory by being there for you, by helping with the foundation, by trying to be the person he believed I could be." "He talked about you more than you think," I said. "Near the end, he told me once that you were the smart one, that you saw possibilities he couldn't see." Her eyes filled with tears. "I wish I'd been there." "I know. But you're here now. That's what matters." We sat in comfortable silence for a while. Then Patricia said, "I have something for you. I was saving it for the right time, and I think this might be it." She pulled an envelope from her purse. Old, yellowed with age. "Your father gave this to my attorney 20 years ago, with instructions to give it to you when the time was right. I think we've reached that point." I opened the envelope. Inside was a letter in Dad's handwriting, stronger, clearer than the shaky script from his final months. "My dear daughter," it began, "if you're reading this, it means you passed the test. Not because you wanted the money, though I hope it helps you build a good life, but because you chose kindness when you could have chosen anger. I know it wasn't fair what I asked of you, to care for someone who hurt you, to show up when he didn't, but I also knew you could handle it, because that's who you are. You were 4 years old when I realized it. You found a bird with a broken wing in the backyard. You insisted we take it to the vet, even though I explained it probably wouldn't survive. You cried when it died, but you still wanted to bury it properly, to give it a funeral. That's when I knew you had a capacity for compassion that couldn't be taught. It was just there, fundamental to who you were. Garrett didn't have that. I loved him, but I saw his limitations. He was a good son in his own way, but he didn't have your strength, your ability to keep showing up, even when it hurt. I'm sorry I put you through this test. I'm sorry I wasn't more direct. But I needed to know that you'd be okay after I was gone, that you'd use whatever I left you to do good in the world, and I needed Garrett to have someone who'd care for him when his mind started to go. His wife loves him, but she wouldn't have been able to handle it alone. He needed you, even though he didn't deserve you. Thank you for being who you are, for being strong enough to be kind, for showing up when it mattered. I'm proud of you. I've always been proud of you. Love, Dad." I read the letter 3 times. Then I folded it carefully and put it back in the envelope. "He knew," I said to Patricia. "He knew I'd do it. He had faith in you. But what if I'd said no? What if I'd chosen the money over helping Garrett?" Patricia shook her head. "Then you wouldn't have gotten the money. That was the whole point. He knew you'd only get it if you were the person he believed you to be. And you are." I drove to the cemetery one last time that day, sat between their graves. "I got your letter," I told Dad. "Took you long enough to explain yourself. The wind blew through the trees. You were right. About me. About Garrett. About all of it. I don't know how you knew, but you did." I placed the letter on his grave, weighted down with a stone. "I'm going to keep doing this. The foundation, the helping. Not because of the money, but because you showed me I could." I stood up, looked at Garrett's grave. "And you. You made it hard, but you taught me something too. That I'm capable of forgiving things I didn't think I could forgive. That I'm stronger than I believed." I walked back to my car, drove home, made dinner. Normal things, everyday things, but meaningful. All of it meaningful. Because I'd learned what Dad was trying to teach me. That showing up matters. That compassion is a choice we make every day. That the inheritance that matters isn't money. It's who we become in the process of earning it. And I'd become someone I was proud of. Someone Dad would be proud of. That was worth more than $4.7 million. Though I had to admit having both was pretty nice. I smiled at the thought. Opened my laptop. Started reviewing applications for the foundation's next round of assistance. There was a single mother whose husband was dying of ALS. She needed help with equipment, with respite care, with just making it through each day. I approved her application immediately, sent an email to our care coordinator to reach out. Then I closed the laptop and sat back in Dad's chair, picked up his book, read the underlined quote one more time. "Do what you can, with what you have, where you are." I was doing exactly that, and it was enough, more than enough. It was everything.